Hey, so welcome to another podcast episode of the Soulful Side of Life with me, Portee. I hope you're well and having a good week. And today's episode discussion is with Julia Yorks, who is a Hollywood screenwriter, and she's been helping brands tell stories across various mediums for over a decade. At an early age, Julia began landing roles on commercials, TV shows, and films such as Late Night with Conan O'Brien, Unbreakable, Hack, The Happening, and she played Chrissy Ferrier on Chris McQuarrie's Jack Reacher. Also, as a young adult, I find this pretty cool because I remember these books so well. She wrote an edition of the popular Chicken Soup for the Soul series. As a social media content creator with 50,000 plus followers across all social media platforms, Julia has grown high engagement communities by sharing her own story. And that's what drew me to Julia. I stumbled across her Instagram profile one day, and she documents and shares her divorce journey. And she's vulnerable, it's raw, and I thought, it would be lovely to talk to her. And so we had a discussion about why we're so addicted and drawn to toxic love stories in TV shows, whether that be Tell Me Lies or the newest series Love Story about John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette, or the latest film Wuthering Heights. We seem to be drawn to these stories where the love is toxic, unfortunately. And I wanted to pick Julia's brain about her thoughts because she's got this background in screenwriting. She understands these stories that are being told and that we're watching, but she also has her own journey of the highs and lows of love. So I thought she would be a perfect person to talk to. So I hope that you enjoy this podcast episode, that you take away something from the discussion, that Julia enlightened you with some wisdom from her own life journey, and that you're blessed by it. So enjoy. Julia, thank you so much for joining my podcast today.
Of course, I'm excited to be here.
You're inspiring in the sense that you're so vulnerable with your own life journey and going through divorce. And the first question that I want to ask you is, before getting into the topic at hand of toxic love and why we're so drawn to it, is that your Instagram account is a bold encouragement to women, and I'm sure men as well, that you've been very vulnerable to talk about your divorce journey. What
Yeah.
made you want to share this part of your life so publicly?
That's a great question. I think that, going through divorce is something that is so incredibly isolating, and yet half of people in marriages go through it. And I wasn't finding the content that I so desperately needed at that time in my life. I would, just search divorce on, the podcast store and really not find people communicating all of the feelings and emotions that I was having until I started. I'm very much an open book in my personal life. I always say, I won't talk shit on the internet, but if you catch me on the street, I'll tell you everything. And so, and really, friends would ask me all the time, like, how often are you going to tell people that you're getting divorced? And I was like, this is my life now, and I would end up connecting with people on the street. And I found that I was so in tune with people that I had just met who had been through the same thing. And I found particularly women who I talked to who were articulating things that they were speaking my language. They were saying exactly what I was thinking. And so I just decided, if I'm having this experience in the wild, I'm sure it would even be helpful on social media. And it just became therapeutic for me as well, because I think I was raised very Catholic, and I think that divorce always felt like a failure and something that I felt ashamed of, even though it wasn't my decision, and it wasn't my choice. And so talking about it felt like a way of kind of taking that power back in a sense, I think.
Yeah. And it's amazing, I'm sure, the number of people that have maybe connected with you, that I think sometimes when we are so open, or that we share something we're going through, other people are going through it too. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you've been a blessing to so many other people.
Yeah, well, thank you. A therapist said to me, because I said, I just feel like I'm on this island and I feel like I'm the only one. And she said, no, you're the first one. And other people are going to come on that island and you're going to have so much wisdom to share. And, recently a friend of mine is going through a divorce, and I was able to say and mean it, the next year or two is going to be really shitty. And I'm sorry. But I promise in those lowest moments, you will get through it, because there were times when I didn't feel that I would. And so, yeah, it's just, it's helpful to be able to come from that place, and now to show kind of the upswing and the positive side. Because 2 years ago, I think there were moments where I was like, I won't survive this. And now I am thriving more than I could have imagined. And I still have those days when I'm on the floor, but
Sure.
they are few and far between now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so you're an ideal person to talk to, because you're a screenwriter and
Yes,
you've been through the highs and lows of love.
totally. Yeah.
From your work and your own life experiences, why do you think toxic love feels so addictive in real life
Mm.
and on screen?
I mean, now that I have learned so much more about emotional regulation and like nervous system in my own life, I think that's so much of what it is. There is like a dopamine hit of, and I think with women, so much of it comes down to feeling chosen. And I think those toxic relationships that we watch on TV, I think about Gossip Girl, I think about, Chuck and Blair when I was growing up and watching that. And, in the first episode, he like does something horrific to a freshman in high school. And you're watching these people, but you're rooting for their love story. And it is so toxic. And it is that push and pull. It is the feeling of being chosen 1 minute and then the feeling of not, and then the high of getting chosen again. And that to me, I think is what is really compelling to the viewers on these TV shows. It's yeah, it's that will they or won't they rush that we've been taught is cinema. And that is the best part of watching any one of these TV shows, even in a procedural or something like, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I remember watching that, and the highlight for me was always the love relationship, Jake and Amy's relationship and the will they or won't they. And I think that's what people are really drawn to. It's that highs and lows, and then we start to accept that into our own life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so funny. Like, when there's a guy that you're texting and talking to, and when the
Mhm.
text comes in, how just that dopamine hit, it just goes sky high. And
Yeah.
it's like, I've been chosen. He's messaged
Yes.
me, even if he's sending a one word answer or something. It's like you could be waiting all day. Deep down inside that he's maybe not interested, but just a one word response. You're like, well, maybe it's something, and we
Yeah.
kind of lower ourselves to that one hit, but that one hit of dopamine may not mean anything. The truth of the matter could be he's just tolerating us, or we're just a placeholder, you know?
No, it's true, but I think
Yeah.
I think that's really what it comes from. It comes from this idea of women, particularly women who are told that we need to be chosen.
Mhm.
And it was funny, my dad said something to me about a year ago when I was going through all of this, and he just said, "I'm so excited for you when you meet the right person." But it's not that he said something along the lines of like, it's not that they're going to choose you, you're going to choose the right person. And I just thought, I was like, Dad, that's so prophetic. um,
Yeah.
But I do think that is such a part of it, and I'm sure it goes back, generations to dowries and all of that stuff. But I do think that we have this idea that we're supposed to be chosen because there is this idea that romantic love is the finish line. It's like the finish line and the starting line for so many people. And what I've learned through my divorce is that there really is no finish line. The entire thing is the journey. And so many people wait until they meet the partner um, to feel as though they can start their life. That's when the story begins. And I think that's, particularly being in my late 30s, I see that with so many friends and people on social media who are like, where is he? It's the Charlotte York, I've been dating since I was 16. Where is he?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you grasp onto those straws and those the really good things from early on in the relationship. And I think women keep trying to say, well, it was so good before without looking at, well, what's it like now? And you see that in so many movies and TV shows, but we romanticize staying with that person because there was good at the beginning. We
Yeah.
being entertainment and screenwriters.
Yeah. You,
I'm part of
you,
the problem.
yeah. You said something interesting twice about how I think for women we're told and we put ourselves in the mindset that we're to be chosen.
Yeah.
And just from a, not that this is a Christian episode, but you mentioned how you came from a Catholic background. And I was reading a
Yeah.
book a few years ago by John Eldridge where he said that women were made to be delighted in, to be chosen. Like in the Bible it says, in him both male and female are found in God. We're both found in him. And so the way that men can go out and fight battles, and and the way that we think of masculine men to be, that is
Uh,
God's nature, but also he wants to be pursued by us, a relationship by us and delighted in. And that's where we women can, I guess, relate to God in that way of being pursued and chased. And I
yeah.
think, for men, maybe they don't understand how important that is to women, to be delighted in, to be chased, but
Yeah.
it really does impact us. And that dopamine hit, and in this day and age, in our generation, a lot of men and women are playing with men as well, but we're just
Uh,
confusing these things that just get us down, when we're playing with each other in the
yeah.
sense. So
Totally. Well, and I think that I think of it so often when I see dating advice, and I think that you should take your dating advice from divorcees because we've been there, we've done that, and particularly not from people in their 20s. That's what I would advise against. But I see so many things where, women go on a date and it's like, well, does he like me? Is there going to be a second one? It's like, well, do you like him? Was it just this, you had a great time and he was normal and could hold a conversation? What else is there? What are the commonalities? What are the things in life that are binding you together? Because I think so often women are told all you want in a relationship is your best friend. You're looking for your best friend. I have a lot of friends, like what I'm looking for is a partner.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what you learn, I think, when you get older is no, it's not just someone that you can sit on the couch with. That's lovely. And I think inherently from spending a lot of time with someone, that's what you end up finding. But no, it's what are those key things that you're looking for? And then I think to the other extreme, we've entered ick culture where someone does one thing that is very human and we're like, nope, write them off the list. Or they don't text me the morning of the date, even though they confirmed the night before and I'm not showing up to the date, So we've really become, there are just so many hard and fast rules and so many different messages that I think women in particularly are receiving about what their worth and their value, and things that men do that um are are not up to their standard, but then by the same time they stay in these toxic relationships that are totally not up to their standard. So it's really, I think dating right now is probably a bit of a minefield.
It is. It's far more complicated, I think, than our grandmothers had to deal with. It's just the things that, and as you go up in class, I find
Yeah.
that men are far more pickier, and you got to keep your weight at this level. You've got to
Mm,
rely solely on me. You can't be an entrepreneur. You can't, like,
yeah.
just, a lot of this I think is rooted in low self-esteem on both
Mm,
sides, and not understanding what it means to hold another person's heart in your hand and to nurture that and to build something that's worthy of family on top. I think people just
yeah.
don't know what it means to be in a relationship. Anyways, so buzzworthy shows like Tell Me Lies,
Oh my
the
gosh.
American Love Story that caught a lot of buzz the last weeks, Wuthering Heights, are keeping messy, complicated romances front and center in our lives, proving that pop culture can't quit a train wreck love story. Why do you think the masses or why do you think, I want to change this question a little bit. Why do you think we as women stay in these
Mm.
toxic relationships? I binged Tell Me Lies a few weeks ago, and it's like 6 seasons or something, like, or 3 seasons, sorry, but it was going on and on forever of this toxicity. Why do we take this as women?
Well, it's funny because all of the movie and the two TV shows that you mentioned, to me, they are all horror. Um, Ryan Murphy does American Horror Story, but I think American Love Story was also a horror show.
Yeah.
It, I think, one, because from a viewer standpoint, if I'm being honest, we watch these shows and there's just really attractive people on it. It's it's
Mm,
it's just hot people. And so we love to watch it. And regardless, we know that they're bad for one another, but they just look so good together. And
mm,
so we love to see that. I think that ultimately the reason why, and to be fair, I think that's kind of one of the reasons why people ship those relationships, is just because they're two attractive people and the actors are charismatic. I think that ultimately women see themselves and their previous relationships or situationships in these stories.
mm,
And when they all end up together, there's some sort of wish fulfillment in that,
mm,
oh, if this could have happened, my situationship could have worked out. But again, I think it goes back to that worthiness of
mm.
what do I deserve? And I know this wasn't one of the shows that you were talking about, and it's a reality show, but I don't know when this is airing, but the Scamanda, or the Wes Wilson, Amanda Batula, Sierra Miller Summer House scandal has just erupted. And there's a moment in a recent episode where Amanda is crying to Sierra, of all people, basically saying, you know, I don't think I could do better. I think this is the best I can do, with
Mm,
her husband, it's just like a very toxic relationship. And I remember in my divorce that intrusive thought that kept coming up after he had left was, my own husband doesn't love me. Who else
mm,
will?
mm,
And I think, unfortunately, particularly with the rise of social media, I think women just have pretty low self-esteem at the
mm,
moment of what we think we are worthy of. And these
mhm.
mediocre men are
Yeah,
just able to run the streets.
yeah. I feel there's a lot more mediocre men than men who are willing to, get in the rough of life and be like, "No, I'm here. I'm committed." Who are mature enough.
Well, and I will say too, this is not necessarily fair, and something that I have had the revelation of post-divorce, because I've met wonderful people I've, dabbled in dating, but I've met people who I'm just like, you're not my person, but you're a fine person. You're just not for me. And what I think is interesting too is the timeline differences for men and women. So a lot of these men don't want the same things that women in their 30s want. I've found that men in their early 30s and their mid 30s, even sometimes in their late 30s, are really active about what does my legacy look like? What is work? And I think guys are they're so easy in a sense where it's like, let me go to work, let me go to the gym, let me go grab a beer with some friends or play basketball, a pickup game on the weekend or go play pool, and they can be totally happy.
Mhm.
Whereas I think so many women, particularly in this day and age, it is like, well, who am I with? I'm trying to find these guys. And it's like the goals and the aims and the timelines are not lining up. And so that's why we are getting these different expectations of relationships
Mhm.
sometimes, So I think it goes full circle, but I really do think there is something about maybe it's settling, maybe it's just the quest to be like, I'm on this timeline. I want kids by this time. So I have to meet this person by this time. We have to be engaged by this time. Like it,
Yeah.
you know, uh, it's really tricky. Um, but I think you see that in TV shows and movies about these women who are just picking the wrong people again and again and again.
Yeah. And that led me to like an or leads me to another question. Do you feel that these shows are representative of how women in society are truly are, or are women transforming and
Mm.
changing themselves according to these shows? Like, which
Ooh,
you think is the most
which came first, the
accurate
chicken or the egg?
representation of reality?
That's so funny. I mean, I feel like everyone knows a Lucy, the girl who, should have given up on this toxic man a long time ago, and you end up losing your friends and your relationships for it. I also feel like everyone has known Carolyn Bessette Kennedy in terms of let me give up my bright, promising future to dull my shine for this man and become smaller. Wuthering Heights is less so, I think. I know fewer of those people. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's representative. To me, both of those are tales as old as time.
Yeah.
And um, I I think that there's probably something in that about women being more nurturing or um, more willing to sacrifice for a relationship that they feel like is idealized. Um, I always say with my marriage, I didn't think that it was I thought it was a good marriage, but I also never would have left
Mhm.
because I was married and I kind of knew who we both were going into the marriage and thought, okay, this is my life. And now that I'm out of it, I'm like, oh, there's more to be had, or there's maybe more compatibility that I can find. Or to be honest, maybe it's better for me for this time to just be by myself and do whatever I want, right? And
Mhm.
only worry about me. And so I think that yeah, I really think that it's people say like decentering men as that's kind of the new rallying cry, but I think it's really centering yourself and figuring out what you want. And
Yeah.
I understand that at a certain age that becomes harder and harder because everyone couples off and you're centering yourself so much that you're just by yourself all the time. But I think that is the character that I would be excited to see, I guess, but also I recently wrote a script where at the end, the main character basically falls in love with herself. And it's like, we love that. And which one is the romantic interest that she ends up with in the end?
Yeah.
Because that's what people want to see, because we want that happy ending. And
Yeah.
her falling in love with herself, while admirable, is not that movie moment. And so I think
Mhm.
that's, it really is. Maybe that's a tick in the column of media driving the narrative.
Yeah. When people were leaving the Wuthering Heights film in the theater on TikTok, women were commenting, "This movie made me want to text my ex." What question should a woman stop and ask herself before actually going and texting an ex, especially one that was toxic?
Ooh, I think it's, can this person make me feel better? Like, will this make me feel better or worse?
Mhm.
Um, I, in my relationship, it was, all of my friends are stunned. I've never once sent a drunk text or any text, really. As far as I'm concerned, if you don't want me, then you will never see me again. I'm a Scorpio though,
Right.
so maybe that's why. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I just think, oh, how embarrassing. I saw something also on TikTok where they're like, if you text your ex, just imagine them looking at their phone, seeing the text and going, ugh,
Yeah.
like, oh, that
Yeah.
gives me goosebumps. So that's my thought. I think that for me, I have really learned to self soothe. Sorry,
Mm.
I have really learned to self soothe post divorce,
Mhm.
because what I've learned is that even the people closest to you who love you the most don't
Mhm.
necessarily know what you need in a moment. The only
Mhm.
person who knows what you need in a moment is you. And maybe they think they're helping by saying, just move on, or he sucks, or whatever it is. And that's not what you need. And so I
Mhm.
think it's really important to look inward and and be able to, whatever gratification you're hoping to get from your ex, can you get it from yourself?
Mhm.
Do a full face of makeup and look in the mirror and be like, okay, great. Or go take yourself out to dinner, or go have a drink, or go to sleep, so that, lock your phone so you don't text them. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think so much of what I'm hearing myself say is, so much of this, I think, comes from self-esteem.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think if, men too, but if women can learn to get some stronger self-esteem and self-worth, self-love, I think we'll be better at the kinds of men that we choose, or a little bit
Yeah.
wiser in that department. And I think, one question a woman should ask herself before texting back a toxic ex is, how did I feel when all the other times in the past when he
Yeah.
hurt me? Like just remembering those scenarios, and if the guy hasn't done any self internal work, texting him is not going to yield a change in the
Well,
behavior.
I think that's a great point, because I think that we are so used to instant gratification.
Mhm.
And I want to feel better now. So let me do the thing that's going to make me feel better right now,
Yeah.
as opposed to, let me sit in this for a minute. And it truly is, the only way out is through, which therapists said to me many times in the beginning stages of my divorce. And I was like, that sounds terrible. I don't want to keep going through this. But it is so true. And anytime that you are, fusing that connection again, you're taking three more steps back.
Yeah, for sure. A friend of mine in her 40s, she's never been married before, but she said something interesting a couple of years ago where, I was saying, I've not been married, as you were saying, girlfriends you have are like, where is he? Women who are in their 30s. And
Yeah.
she said, most of my high school and college classmates, more than half of them are divorced. She's like, "You're not
Mhm.
missing anything." Would you agree
No,
with that statement? Is that the right thing to say to a woman getting close to 40 who's not been married before?
no, I don't think it is, because I think, at the end of the day, which, yeah, I appreciate the sentiment. I always say I don't regret anything in my life. I don't regret getting married. I don't regret the way my life played out, because it brought me to this point. I think that it's totally valid to want a partner. And
Mm.
so I think that the correct response is not, well, look at all these unhappy people. You're doing great. I think the correct response is, I understand. And I understand that you feel that way. And I think that everyone's on a different timeline. And just because you don't have it right now doesn't mean that you won't have it. I was joking with a friend of mine, and it was like, that person could be right around the corner. So now we kind of pop around every corner and we're like, is he there? But what I've learned is your life can change in an instant for better and for worse. And so just because you don't have it now doesn't mean that you're not going to have it. And I think the best way to find someone is to stop looking and pour everything that you would pour into that search into yourself, because
Yeah.
this is your life. This is it. So it's about making it as beautiful and special and exciting as you want in this moment. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't think the best thing is look at everyone else's failed marriages.
Sure. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
everyone else is miserable too, like, I don't
Right,
know.
right, kind of
That's
mindset. Yeah.
yeah.
I agree, 'cause it can make you feel down, but then you start to think, "Oh, wow, well, maybe I'm maybe I'm in a better position." It's maybe not the
Well,
healthiest way to think.
I just think comparing is never a good idea. That's what
Yeah.
I've learned the hardest way. Everyone is on their own path. I so wanted to be a mom. I thought I was going to be the year that I ended up becoming a divorcee. And now I am so glad that I'm not at this phase of my life. And I look at my friends with kids and who are pregnant, and I'm so happy for them. And it is so crazy. You look at a baby and I'm like, I would jump in front of a bus for this baby. And so I can't imagine what it would be like if it were my baby. But this summer, I'm going to give up my apartment and go travel around Europe for 3 months. And all my friends with
Nice.
babies are like, I'm so jealous. I wish I could do that. And it's just, I know that I will get to do the things that I want to do, but not right now. And so
Yes,
I'm going to try to fill it up with stuff that I never would have dreamed that I could have done and do
of
it
course.
now. And, but there also is, I think, I watched this TikTok video um, from a guy who was saying, we're constantly telling single people, like, go take the solo trip or take yourself out to dinner. And he's like, I've done all that. What I'm looking for now is someone to do it with. And so I
Mm.
understand kind of the difference between being single versus being divorced. Because to me, all of that stuff feels exciting versus, oh, I've been there, done that. Where is he? Um, but yeah, I guess I've just learned that, we all make decisions based on the information that we have at the time. So the people who got married early and now are getting divorced, they did that. And the people who have avoided having to be in a position to get divorced, they, did that as well. And um, there really are no wrong answers and no time limits on doing
Sure.
the things that you want to do.
Of course. 2 last questions.
Yeah.
Do you feel that with your experience of being divorced, that TV shows, even going back to when you were a teenager, contributed to, I don't want to say contributed to your divorce, but just contributed to how you interacted and went about you and how you acted in your relationship? And if that's the case, how can we guard our hearts better to not
Mm,
to not take Hollywood into our relationships, or how we view ourselves
yeah.
in our relationships?
I think often Hollywood normalizes, well, the people who write shows are real people using their real experiences to inform what's on the screen. And so that's why so many tropes or stereotypes are actually real or funny to people. I think about Modern Family and I think of the, Claire and Phil Dunphy trope. And, that clip that you always see on the internet where she's like, I'm angry, but I'm not telling you why, because you should know why I'm angry. And Phil's like, oh, I don't know, you know, but that relationship between husband and wife, where it's kind of the aloof but kind dad and the very controlling, you know, wanting to do best for her family mom, is such a stereotype because it's such a reality, I think, for so many people. And when you watch things like that on show after show after show and movie after movie after movie, like this is what is the knocked up where, she's like, I want to go to the movies, I think that it does reinforce like, oh, this dynamic in my relationship is just normal. This is what it's supposed to be. And I also think, there's the trope, as I said earlier, about your partner being your best friend. It's the friends to lovers trope. And that's great, but that's not, maybe that's what you're looking for at 25, but it's not what you're looking for at 35. And so I definitely think all of those tropes and stereotypes and characterizations are rooted in reality and heightened, but they tend to normalize relationships that maybe aren't necessarily functional or to both parties' highest good. So, yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, when I met my ex-husband at 25, I was looking for a best friend. I was looking for someone who made me laugh and someone that I was attracted to. And I found all of those things. And again, it's just, okay, but what happens when you have a loved one pass away? Or what happens when you're in the throes of postpartum? Or, what happens when you're, you know, dealing with a writer's strike or like a tough situation in your career? What does that look like? And, I think those are the questions that people should really be looking for, but that's not what's on screen.
Yeah. Yeah, for
It's
sure.
either these passionate, very toxic relationships or it's naggy bitch wife and, dumb, lovable husband.
But that's so though unhealthy for, a girl who's 10 and up who are watching
Yeah.
these shows, or teenage girls who are watching these shows, because I don't think our grandmothers and great grandmothers didn't have TV like this. And maybe they had soap operas, our grandmothers, but which it was its own toxicity, I guess, at the time.
Totally. Well, and I mean, too, relationships back then were different for so many ways
Yeah.
as well. And it's like, I don't know, is that the gold standard of a marriage? Um,
Mm.
what our parents or grandparents or great grandparents went through as well. I mean, you know, probably not, but
Yeah.
it is, it is so interesting. I think that with people getting married older or with
Mm.
people going through second marriages, I do think that we're a lot more clear on what we're looking for, or we'd rather just be alone. And
Yeah.
and it is becoming more acceptable to be alone.
Yeah.
And that to me feels like the major difference of this period in time. But in TV shows and movies, we are still idealizing the romantic relationship, which I also appreciate. I love, and I love partnership and companionship, but I think that that view of what a good functional marriage looks like is shifting
Yeah.
in the
Last
culture, maybe not on screen.
I understand. Yeah, there
Yeah.
seems to be this difference, yeah, between the two.
Yeah.
Last question. We're coming out of Women's History Month.
Hmm.
How can women and men be more discerning and wiser about reducing toxic love in their lives?
I mean, I think the best thing that you can do truly is listen to the people around you, which the people who love and support you the most often hold a mirror up to your situation that you cannot see. And I think that that is helpful to actually maybe get a second opinion um, when you are in a place that your self-esteem or your sense of self-worth is not at a level that makes you able to determine that for yourself, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it can be tricky navigating love in
Yeah.
this day and age, but it's not impossible.
No, I don't think so. And I think another thing that I tend to look at is I look at people and say, is that a relationship that I would want? And if so, then that's maybe where I take my advice from or take my um take my guidance from watching them and how they interact. I now find dating a bit like, you know, internships. Like, oh, what do I like about this job? What do I not? What are the pieces that I want to take away into, the next place that I work? And that's kind of how I feel a little bit about dating at the moment. And I think, I don't know, maybe I'm in that I believe that people are inherently good. And I think that maybe someone is just not the right person for me. And that's okay. It doesn't make them a bad person.
Yeah.
If their communication style is different or whatever, like they're just not my person. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned since divorce is that you cannot change anyone. So look at someone for who they are.
Mm.
Oh, I love him, but he, vapes. Okay, then he's not your person, right? Like look
Yeah.
for that who doesn't, because you're not going to be able to change that about a person. Or,
Yeah.
I love her, but she really wants to move to California and that's not in my plan. Okay, well then that's not your person, right? Like
Yeah.
and I think so often people enter into relationships thinking they're perfect, but this one thing. And that would be, I think, my biggest relationship advice is the person in front of you, can you accept their quirks and flaws? Or if not, then that's not your person. But it doesn't make them a
Yeah.
bad person.
Exactly. And if they are, as a friend of mine in Berlin, when I lived there, I asked him advice about a guy, and he's like, "This sounds like a social work project. If I can be frank, I wouldn't take that on." And learning a sense of self-worth and empowerment is learning to say no. It's okay to,
Yeah.
we don't have to take it on if it's
Yeah.
not for us.
And I think that's very true for women as well, because I think we are so nurturing. There's a woman on TikTok, I don't know her handle, but she talks about like our timelines
Mm.
and how, we are on like a vibrational timeline. I've gotten very woo-woo since divorce. But we're on like a vibrational timeline and, we're trying to hit throughout our life to hit a certain level, but how certain relationships with people can bring us down to their timeline, or like having a child with the wrong person that brings us down to a different timeline where now we have to fight to get back up. And I found it so interesting because not everyone is meant to be on your timeline, and that's okay. But if you are not willing to release from certain situations, it just drags you down and makes it harder to get to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Julia, thank you so much for your time and your insight and your words of wisdom.
Well, thank you. This was so much fun.
I hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode and that you have found a soulful connection to the conversation. God bless you, and until the next episode, go bless somebody else.